I thought I'd take a moment while I'm in between stages of a recent portrait to explain my core pastel portrait palette. So this is the video that I had wished that I had found when I started looking into pastel portrait painting. And while there are fantastic videos out there, there isn't one that suited what I was looking for. So I was looking for a palette, a core palette that I could use for any sitter that I had, regardless of their ethnicity, skin tone, that would just allow me the freedom to go as light as I needed to go and as dark as I needed to go within my, the realm of my sitter and their, natural palette. So I thought I'd explain what I'm doing, and sorry if you hear the dog barking, she probably hears the snowplow. But I thought I'd just explain my setup and what kind of my system, for lack of a better word. So I use mostly Rembrandt pastels. I do have some hard pastels, and I'll explain why I have them, but the bulk of the pastels that I put down are Rembrandts. I have some Senneliers in my box, and I tend really not to reach for them. I think I've reached for them a few times when I've been doing a very big portrait and I needed just a very strong, bold highlight because Senneliers are so soft that the way they grab onto my pumice board, they just hold the pigment and it creates a nice blob. Anyways, I digress. So this is my system. So I use mostly Rembrandts. I have some hard pastels. I think these are new pastels, but it really doesn't matter. I either use new pastels or Cretacolor, and I'm probably leaning towards Cretacolor now only because New Pastel Prismacolor quit offering these open stock, and I am very specific about the colors that I use. I also have some charcoal pencils and some vine charcoal, and let me organize a little bit better. I have pastel pencils, and I use them very judiciously, and I'll explain that in a minute. I have erasing tools, sharpening tools, and blending tools. And I have measuring tools. So I don't blend a lot other than layers, but once in a while I do want to soften an edge, and I tend to lean towards things like stumps to help me soften an edge. Once in a while a Q-tip. Depending on the surface that I'm working on, I prefer two surfaces right now. One is the Sennelier La Carte, and the other one is a pumice board that I make myself. On the Sennelier La Carte, this is brilliant for softening an edge. So as I'm trying to turn a cheek, I may not want a harsh shadow line, so I can go in and just lightly tap this and it will knock the line out. It does not work on my pumice board. It literally lifts all of the pigment off the pumice. This I'm using more and more for backgrounds. If I need to flatten the background into my pumice board, this is brilliant. This is these are backer rods, and they're like less than $5 on Amazon, and I cut them into little pieces, and I have enough there to last me my entire lifetime, and probably to include in my will to bequeath to somebody. So I'm good with that. Let's see. I keep a kneaded eraser, which I don't really use for erasing except when I'm putting in my initial drawing. I'll use this to lift up the charcoal, but I will also use this to lift up the charcoal. And if I do need to erase any of my pastel painting, I can go in and scrub it out with this chamois cloth. I tend to use this when I'm painting. You can see how dirty it is, to actually manipulate the painting. I can lift or knock some of the pastel out of like negative spaces if I need to lighten an area or neaten up an edge. I can use this. So with my process, I tend to go in first with some fine charcoal and loosely sketch in where I think the features are. And then I'll establish a top line and a bottom line and determine where one of the eye tear ducts are in one of the eyes. And using those 3 points, I can then look at the initial sketch that I put in, which sometimes I get right, parts of it, and most of the time I have things in weird places, so I can move things around. But I like to put that initial first scribbly sketch in just to get rid of the blank canvas. I will use charcoal pencils in later stages as I'm painting if I've lost either if I've lost some of the likeness, which will happen during the process, the likeness kind of comes and goes, and then, or if I need to establish a perimeter line, I will use some charcoal pencil. Okay, so this is the system of colors that I have. I have mostly permanent red, yellow ochres, so these are permanent reds. This is a permanent red. Actually, this is not. This is a permanent rose. Permanent red, yellow ochre. These are burnt sienna. This is I think this one's a burnt umber, actually. Nope. Yep, this is a burnt umber. This is a red iron oxide. This is also red iron oxide, as is this one. So these 3 colors here. And then I have some cool reds. This is an Indian red and some warm reds, because I find that these colors are great for, so this is like a burnt sienna. This one is a Caput Mortem red, and this is an Indian red, and I find that these are great for mimicking kind of the blood under the skin, like in the cheeks and nose, and sometimes around the eyes. And then I have green that I use for toning, if I need to knock some red back, or create, sometimes shadows will have a greenish hue, a purplish hue, a blue hue. So I keep green because I find that mostly I see green. And then I have some primary colors, yellow ochre, red, and this is ultramarine blue. And this reminds me, if any of my oil painters out there, this kind of reminds me of King's Blue Light, which is a staple on my oil painting palette, just because this is brilliant for if you glaze over an area that needs to be cooled down, but green might not be the best color for it, then this is great. And I have a darker version. This is Prussian Blue. And then these are strictly for toning. These are 2 shades of raw umber and black. So often I will use this to deepen a shadow or an edge as you know, you're rounding out a feature. This is helpful. And then I have some very specific colors of hard pastels that I use mostly, again, for glazing. These I use for highlights. I will use this one for highlights too. This I will use if I need something that's kind of, Rembrandts are great for glazing too, but these are even leaves like a lighter wash. If I just need to turn something a little bit red but not too much, this is great. Also, this is great for like the inside corners of eyes. I have a hard pastel version of these. This is actually probably a very dark burnt sienna, and I find that on darker skin tones, if I use these in combination, it's brilliant for creating dark shadows on darker skin tone, and then I can either tone it more of a blue or more of a green, depending on if I need something, a purple or colder shadow or a warmer shadow. I will often, in the darkest skin tones, glaze with black in what I perceive as the darkest areas of the shadow, but I'm very judicious when I use it like that, because it can be overpowering. And then these three colors I use specifically as a glaze to tint things if I need something to go colder, a little pinker. I have this lilac. If I need something to go colder but bluer, or if it mixes with the underneath, more purple, less pink, I can use this. And then this is kind of a ochre green. It's not as, ochre's never bright, but it's not as bright as pure ochre. And it has some green undertones. So I find this is really great when I want to warm something up, but gently, nothing too fancy. And then I do keep some pastel pencils. These two I will use if I need a tiny little spot highlight, but sometimes I can get away with, these can have sharp corners. They blunt out like you see this one on one side, and then I keep the other side nice and sharp. So, and I can break a pastel if I need to get a hard edge. But sometimes I just need an indication, and I find this very useful on the inside of lower eyelids when you're trying to kind of capture the highlight of the moistness of an eye. I have a black pastel pencil that I usually use at the very end to create things like eyelashes and to sign my name. And because I don't do this with eyelashes. I don't make lines. I make scribbles around the eyes, and maybe some dots on the lower eyelid, but I tend to keep it very irregular, and it looks more natural. And so I find that a pencil works better than a hard pastel or a Rembrandt. Also, I can often use this just to quickly indicate where I think I want the pupil to be before I go in with my softer pastels to create, the iris and the pupil, that combo of the eye. I have some warm reds that are kind of like this, that again I use if I need something really in a tight spot. And I don't know why this is on my palette, because I don't think I've ever used this, even though it's short. I think I used it for another project, but not for pastel painting. But yeah, I find I just don't use this color ever. These I use all the time, and I'm constantly buying new ones and replenishing, because I find that regardless of skin tone, we all have this kind of violet underneath our skin. And I find it very helpful, and especially this in corners of mouths, nostrils. This thing is great, especially if you mix it with the black. So if you put a nostril in and then soften the edge with this, it looks very natural. And I will use this too a lot in corners of eyes, and just if I need, So I was working on a portrait of somebody yesterday. I was doing a color study, and beautiful African American skin that had a lot of purple undertones. And this in the corner of the eye would have looked too warm. It wouldn't have looked right. But this in the corner of the eye was perfect because it's cooler. So that's why I have those on there. So kind of my system is, and it's so fluid because, but in the core, I tend to use these for the shadows. Actually, this for the shadow with this. This for the lighter edges of the shadow. In combination with these two, this is pinker, this is more yellow, but they are the same value. I will use these in kind of the mid-tone area, this in the light mid-tone area, and these for highlights, again, a very cold red, a warmish red, and then yellow. And I find that it doesn't matter what spectrum, whether it's somebody very pinky light or somebody very ebony dark, I can use this palette to reflect all the different colors in the skin tones, because it doesn't matter. We all have so much color in our skin tones. I do use the primary colors to tone if I need something to go yellow, if I need something to go red, or if I need to cool something down, I have these. And then I use these also, like I said, to tone. Now, I do keep an extra little tray because everybody is different. As you know, this is as universal as I can see it when I'm perceiving somebody. But everybody's unique. So there are people who maybe their natural palette leans more towards purple, or somebody whose natural palette leans more towards greens and yellows. Sometimes people are wearing colors in their clothing that, of course, I don't have here. So I supplement with this. If I find I'm working on somebody where the light that's hitting them is very cold, so the shadows, so their highlights are very cool, and I need something more like an icy blue but lighter, then I can put that, I have that Rembrandt and I can stick it in my palette here. So this is kind of my supplemental palette for things like clothing, jewelry, hair color, extra skin colors to create more of the realistic skin tone as I see it when I'm looking at somebody in the light that they are in. And I think that sums it up. I hope this kind of helps if you are also starting or curious or searching for a color palette that you can use for portrait pastel painting. Let me go through these again. So this is a very light permanent rose. These are permanent reds here. These are yellow ochres. This is a burnt sienna. This is I think this was a oxide red. This is a burnt umber. These are light oxide red. So these two are light oxide red, as is this one for blush. I have a medium burnt sienna, a Caput Mortuum red, and Indian red. Again, these are kind of light to mediums. So if you're using Rembrandts, they're kind of like on the 7 and 8 scale. I have a medium and a lighter shade of olive green. I have kind of the in between these two in a hard pastel. I forget what they call. I have no idea what this is called. It's a 204 in new pastel. And so I have a lighter version of that. Ivories, a cream, this is a lilac, an icy blue, kind of a greeny yellow. This I know is a burnt sienna, darkest you can get. Ultramarine light, Prussian blue, 2 shades of raw umber, and a black, and then whatever I supplement. So again, I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to put them in the comments, and I will answer them to the best of my ability. So yeah, okay, until next time, thank you.